Whoops. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. So I have been reading The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I am about 200 pages away from the end of volume 1 here. And I constantly am thinking about whether this is the sort of thing I should not finish and lay aside, or should I stick it through to the end with. Before I started my project of trying to read better, I invariably would have set something like this aside, and anything I would have set aside. I'm 200 pages from the end of volume of book 1, let's say. I'm not yet done with volume 1, and this contains volume 1 and 2 out of 7. But since I've been reading solidly for, now it's officially a year and a half, I have not DNF'd anything, DNF being BookTube lingo for not finishing something. There, that's better. So recently what we've been covering in this section has been the show trials of Stalin in the 30s. I think they started a little bit before that. And what I find is, growing up, even without having studied anything about Soviet Russia, I knew a little bit about the show trials, I don't know how, by some sort of osmosis. And I'm actually content with just the general knowledge that I had on the subject. Solzhenitsyn takes me in much greater detail than I ever wanted and ever want to know. But be that as it may, I'm progressing. And I found multiple trials just way too tedious. Solzhenitsyn recounts what's happening, but his writing style is such that every like 3 or 4 sentences, he reports what's happening, but then he injects his little snide aside, editorial aside, commenting on the proceedings. So I don't like the writing style especially, and I don't like particularly the nitty-gritty of the information. But then all of a sudden, the latest trial of which he's covered is Bukharin, who I believe wrote the Constitution, was an intimate of Stalin, and thought for sure that he was in Stalin's good graces until he wasn't. So it's somewhat interesting if you're interested in a mind like Stalin's, I suppose. He describes Stalin as getting off on playing a cat and mouse game with Bukharin, letting him think that he's going to be saved, and then, ultimately reneging on any sort of commitments he might have made to him. Already I know more than enough about Stalin. I was quite pleased. This is not directly a history, mind you, but I was pleased when Lenin had his couple of strokes and then was eased out of the picture. A history might be more interesting to actually study the machinations by which Stalin came to the leadership of the country and the party and the Union. So I persist with this, and I do that knowing that it's, with opportunity cost, it's taking my mind away from other things that I might prefer to be looking at. Now, it occurred to me, I am not a particular fan of Russian studies, if you will. I read some years back a bunch of novels and enjoyed them, and then I stepped away from that, and I have not felt compelled to pick up another great Russian novel until this one, which I thought was a novel but is not a novel, to my disappointment. And it occurred to me, well, the next step might be, I would rather be reading, say, something about China at this time. China is more interesting to me in many respects. But then I thought, oh no, now maybe I'm going to have to read something about the Mao years in China. I don't want to do that either. I really don't. I didn't want to read anything about the Stalin years. But that said, I'm going to try to persist with it because I think that there is a value in not laying something aside. And if I were a stronger reader, then persisting with something that I don't like would not be so much of a burden. Before I undertook to read that, still thinking that it was a novel, a couple of years ago, I got some other books by Solzhenitsyn, and it was just in the course of looking for the Gulag Archipelago, I believe, I came across this nice little box set. And it was online for, I took a screenshot, but I think I subsequently deleted it, for something like $3.25 with free shipping. I don't recall if it was shrink wrapped or not, but the books are all pristine. They're old, but they're unread. And I certainly wish that I had undertaken this one day in the life of Ivan Denisovich or something like Denisovich. I wish I had undertaken that, as that was the book that made Solzhenitsyn's name, at least in the West. I of course, don't know anything about its reception in Russia, and these books won't likely have any kind of information of that sort. So I will continue with the Gulag Archipelago, and I'm sure that no followers of my channel want to keep seeing videos of me posting about it, so I will try to lay low. Possibly when I finish this volume, I'll have something more to say. But for me, as opposed to, say, finishing a book and speaking a review of it, I like to engage with the book while I'm reading it and think about it. And so in these videos, I just am spouting the sort of thoughts that pop into my head while I'm pursuing it. And I don't know what else to do with something like this. I imagine the broad sweep of it will be too much to accommodate in one small review. So I will leave it at that. And thank you again for stopping by.